Well, thanks for joining us here on a Thursday morning. I'm Marlon Bowling with you, your tour guide to the ag commodities. Well, Thursday morning means it's weekly export sales day, and indeed it is today. We just got all those weekly numbers in from USDA, and it may harbor a few surprises in the report this week. Let's take a look at the rundown of some of the sales that we had this past week. Well, let's look at the corn. 1.42 million tons of corn were sold last week. Of that amount, 1.24 million tons were for the old crop. And because we had such an exceptional week last week, that was actually down 13% from a week ago. But it was still 28% higher than the 1 month average. Now, we had sales of 183,500 tons that were earmarked for new crop corn, and those were sold to Japan. Now, we'll take a look at soybeans. 731,100 tons were sold this past week. And that was up quite a bit from what we had here a week ago, so that was nice to see that. The trade was expecting anywhere between 125,000 and 900,000 tons. So that was a nice, healthy number on the soybeans for a change, especially considering this time of year. Well, let's take a look at the wheat, and wheat was 492,600 tons, and that was amid a range of estimates that ran between 150,000 and 500,000 tons. Meanwhile, we also had numbers that came in for grain, sorghum, cotton, and rice, and boy, look at the grain sorghum sales last week. My goodness, they really got with the program. 356,300 tons were sold last week. That was a large amount. That's a marketing year high, up 89% from the week before, and that wasn't a bad week either. Upland cotton, 238,300 running bales this past week, and the rice at 38,800 tons. Well, I want to welcome aboard Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions and get his thoughts on this. And Brian, as I was coming down to the studio here just a moment ago, then we got another little cherry on top, and it was another overnight export sale. I assume you got that same report.
Yeah, good morning, Marlon. It is a sale of corn to China, third consecutive day. Another 25 million bushels roughly sold to that country over the last 3 days. So it brings their 3-day total to about 77 million bushels of corn that they bought for the old crop this week. Our sales this last week totaled 48.7 million bushels. We only need to be averaging about 23 to 25 million to reach the USDA forecast, as they lowered that forecast last week in the supply and demand report. So we're going to be well above that next week. We're probably going to see a marking year high as far as our exports go. So, certainly what's happening in Argentina, the drought that is ongoing there is going to improve our corn exports. And we've seen a really robust sales week this week to China. So it's an improvement in our demand. We think demand is going to improve as we go into the spring timeframe because of Argentina. Ethanol production up yesterday as well, even though the stocks were a 50-week high. It's a corn market that has fallen to a level that's stimulating demand, but it's also because of the drought that's ongoing in Argentina and their lack of exports that's helping us rebound here. China was a buyer of U.S. soybeans again last week of about 7.6 million bushels out of that 25 million bushel total. So, about 2.6 of that was switched over from an unknown destination category. So corn and soybean sales, they're very strong for this time of year compared to where we could be or where we usually are on a normal growing season.
Well, let's look at the futures, and that's interesting. You say like 72 million bushels sold to China this week. That's like the equivalent of roughly about 70 country elevators out there. Wow, just all in one fell swoop. Okay, corn. We closed up before this last overnight sale was announced. May corn was up 2 3/4. We had December, though, down 1/4 cent, so that spreading continues there. Soybeans, we had the May 6.5 cents higher overnight, but November was down a penny. Same story there. Spreading continues. On the wheat in Chicago, May was down 3 cents, and it dipped under $7 at $6.99 3/4. In Kansas City, the May was down 1/2, and in the Minneapolis wheat, we had the May contract down 2 at $8.50 1/2. We also had beef and pork export numbers. What did they do this week after a disappointing week last time? We'll talk about that next. Well, we had beef and pork export sales announced this morning. Last week they were pathetic. What did we have this week? Well, on the beef side, 17,700 tons, so they really perked up. And the pork increased to 35,600 tons. I see where China was in there for 1,600 tons of the beef and 5,000 tons of the pork. Let's go back to Brian Hoops. What do you think of those numbers?
Well, yeah, there's certainly a rebound after last week's marking near lows in the beef. A number back into the range of what we had been doing on a weekly basis. And that same is true for the pork sales as well. So a nice rebound. We're probably going to see a little bit of a recovery, I think, in the cattle market to start the week. We had some cash trade yesterday at $1 lower, not only on a dress basis in the north, but also in the southern trade. But we did see a little bit of hedge lifting late in the day. And with tomorrow's cattle on feed report, I don't think there's going to be a lot of pressure again to the downside. We've been down 7 or 8 days in a row. And with these numbers and that hedge lifting and the cattle on feed, I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of a little technical recovery coming into this market. Feels vastly oversold if we're trading 164 cattle in the plains, that we are trading below 162 on the April board.
You beat me to the question. All right. So, yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. So let's take a look at where we did finish yesterday. And, well, on that April contract, the nearby contract here on the live cattle, these quotes provided by Bar Chart were $1.50 lower at 161.55 yesterday. The active June down $1.17 at 156.57. Meanwhile, we closed up the feeder cattle market yesterday with the April down $2.50 at 193.25. May also down $2.50. And on the lean hogs yesterday, we had the April down $1.65 at 83.75. But yikes, you go out to June and July, over $3 lower yesterday. We'll see if they bounce or not today with the good export news. Brian, thanks for all the help this morning. Good to hear from you. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. So, Tammy, here we go again.